Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching our panel. I'm really excited to be joined by a crew of extremely cool people to talk about Kickstarter comics. I'm Oriana Leckert. I'm the Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach for Kickstarter. I'm just going to talk real quick about what's going on with Kickstarter comics today because it is really good news. It's a tough time for everyone, as we all know, but Kickstarter Comics is doing really well. At this point, creators have run more than 10,000 successful projects, raising more than $127 million from 900,000 backers. 2020, despite everything, was Kickstarter Comics' best year ever with nearly $26 million raised. That's a full $10 million more than in 2019, which was our previous best year ever. And the coolest statistic, in my opinion, is that the current success rate for comics is 74%, which is more than double the site average. So, all of you Kickstarter Comics creators, keep up the incredible work. Thank you for what you're doing. Anybody who's considering jumping on the platform, now really might be the time. And now I'm going to talk to all of these rad folks so that we can all talk about maybe why that's true and what everyone's experiences are. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. We'll go one at a time, and then we'll jump into some questions. So, Henry Barajas, tell us about you.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Henry Barajas. I am a comic book creator. I've written Voz De M.A.Y.O, which was successfully kickstarted and had participated in many different anthologies, but that was my first big graphic novel. And my latest success with Helm Grey Castle. And very excited to do something a little different as far as mixing Mesoamerican history with Aztec history and sword and sorcery genre. But my day job, I'm the director of operations at Top Cow Productions, and I've been very involved with the most successful Kickstarters they have run, which is the Witchblade hardcover, 1 and 2, and the Darkness hardcovers, kind of reintroducing the series back to fans and new readers through Kickstarter has been such a energizing and fulfilling, no pun intended, experience.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Coming to us from France, Elsa Charretier.
Hi, so thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be talking about Kickstarter. So I am a French, like you said, comic book artist and writer. So I've done a lot of work for DC, Marvel, and all of those mainstream comics. And more recently, I've switched back to independent comics, which is my first love. And I have crowdfunded 3 different campaigns and 2 over the past 2 years, which were surprisingly to me very successful. And so that's where I am today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Afua Richardson.
Hello, my name is Afua, and for the past 15 years, I have been illustrating comics for Marvel, DC, Kodansha, and working on some really awesome books I feel really lucky to be a part of, like Black Panther World of Wakanda, X-Men 92, Totally Awesome Hulk, and most recently on set with Lovecraft Country with HBO. That was filmed here in Georgia, and I successfully funded my first Kickstarter for Aquarius, the Book of Mer, which will be out through Image Comics this May.
Heck yeah. And Jimmy Palmiati.
Yes, hi, I'm Jimmy Palmiati. I've been working in comics probably longer than everyone here is before they were born, which is sad, but that's reality.
No, you're seasoned.
Very seasoned, yes. Oh yeah. No, I started out as an inker in comics, and then I became a full-time writer in the 2000s, and I've been working everything from event comics, my own company with Joe Quesada, and then Marvel Knights for a while, and then writing a lot of books and working with my wife these past years on Amanda Cano on Harley Quinn, and now we're going full-time pretty much with Kickstarter. So I'm really happy to be here.
So cool. Oh, Just love this already. Okay, so my first question is going to be, what is the first Kickstarter campaign you ran, and what made you decide that that was the way you wanted to fund that particular project? So I think, Afua, let's start with you because you've just done one, so maybe that was the most recent decision for everyone.
Yes, I decided. I felt a little late in the game, but that on Black Friday of last year, I was going to launch my first Kickstarter for the Book of M.A.Y.O. And prior to that, I felt like I couldn't get ahead of my projects. I was working on Lovecraft Country on set, and I felt like with each project, I put in so much creative energy that I didn't have the space or time to invest in my own. And what Kickstarter enabled me to do was say, okay, I'm going to turn down projects and invest in my own. And with Kickstarter being kind of a pre-order and incentivizing pre-order platform, this also said to publishers, okay, we don't have to take a risk. We know that people want to purchase this. So we're also going to invest in you. So this, I was surprised because there's so many like just amazing projects and stories that are out there. I was a little afraid that it wouldn't be funded, but I think that's just the fear when you ask people for support. But I felt like this was the best way for me to be able to create what I wanted to and be able to call the shots. So, yay.
I always tell people, if you are both excited and terrified in equal measure as you hit that launch button, then you know that you're doing it right.
all the fears and sweats. Yes, that was happening for sure.
Jimmy, what about you?
Oh, you're muted right now, Jimmy.
Sorry, mute. Sorry, I had to mute button on. I actually, my first Kickstarter was a book called Queen Crab, and it was in 2012. It's when the platform, I don't know when Kickstarter started, but I got right on board from the beginning. I just read about it and I said, well, let me try this. I have a book I'm working on that nobody wants. that I kind of wrote for myself, and I was like, and every publisher was like, I don't get it, and whatever. And I just said, well, let me see if I can find enough people that might be interested in this. And yeah, I read about Kickstarter and I launched it, and it did very well, and I hit my goal. And that started. I've done 15 since, so I've been and gonna amp up a little bit more these days. But I just found like, when you work for other people, it's like you're doing their books and it's their characters and everything. And I just felt with Kickstarter, it's like I can actually unload my brain onto something that I want to read in a way. And you hope that, and I hope I find people that have like minds or at least have interest in it. And I just found, for me, it's just been fantastic. And again, you're right. It's like that launch button is just, I must go back and check my campaign 15 times before I press that button, because I'm like, I know I screwed up. Somehow I'm going to be buying things for people if I don't figure this out right, But yeah, even still, it's just a fantastic platform for me. It's just been great. And again, my wife and I are going to double down on it this year, so we're really excited.
Heck yeah. And I promise these people aren't all plants. We are going to talk about some of the challenges of Kickstarting too. Just wanted to start, with the high notes. Elsa, what made you first come to the platform?
Well, it's kind of like Jimmy, actually. So my very, very first book, I didn't crowdfund on Kickstarter because back then Kickstarter was not available in France, but we had another similar platform. So I consider it like kickstarted it, but it was a slightly different platform. So, and it was for my first book that I had created with my partner, and like Jimmy, no one wanted it. It's like, yeah, I don't get it. Or you're just like two young creators and we don't know you. We're not ready to trust you right now. And so we decided that we still wanted to do it because it was a story that we believed in and we thought that it had an audience out there. Just the publishers wouldn't allow us to find it. So it was up to us to do that job. And so that's what we did. We put the book up on the platform and it did really, really well for, maybe nowadays, it's not considered like a huge campaign, but back then the fact that people would give us money to do a book, and those people didn't know us because we had just started out, so it was like really based on, I want to say, merit. And so that was very encouraging because we had a lot of like no's, and so that first big yes from actual potential readers was fantastic. And so we actually got to print the book, and then we shopped it to American publishers, and then IDW back then picked it up, and so it ended up actually getting published in the States. But so yeah, like Jimmy, the fact that we refused to forget about a project that we were interested in and we knew had a public, we just decided to do it ourselves. And so that was my first book. And the latest two campaigns that I did were for art books, which is it's just completely different. And it's not something, unless you're like a huge creator, it's not something that a publisher is going to pick up, they don't publish art books from like people like me. So the only way that I could publish and put it out there was through Kickstarter. And that started a whole thing then.
I saw a tweet yesterday that said artists are people who make the ideas in their head pay rent. So I feel like
yeah,
along those lines.
And Kickstarter allows us to like kind of put out projects that are not maybe a right fit for a publisher right now, but still have value.
Yeah, and can find an audience.
Yeah.
Cool. And Henry, did you start doing your own stuff or with your job stuff, or what brought you to the platform?
Well, I think Jimmy brought me to the popcorn, that smell of his Kickstarter comics back in the day. I used to write about Kickstarter comics because I thought it was really a lot of, I used to work for a comic book review site, and everyone was so focused on Marvel and DC comics, and I'd always wanted to find a way to talk about comics that just wasn't about that. So Kickstarter was one of those avenues, and Jimmy was one of the first people I got to talk to. And I really appreciated the platform because it's another way to reach comic book readers that isn't just a traditional method. I think it's like kind of like Netflix, where you just click a button and it ends up at your house versus you having to physically go somewhere and get something. But when I decided to do my comic, it was out of necessity, like everyone else. I was a guy who wrote about comics, who was like talking about comics, not making comics. So it was really hard for publishers to take a risk on what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was write about my great grandfather, who nobody knows about, talk about his championing Native American rights and saving their land and helping one of the last Native American tribes gain federal recognition, which I think is pretty important, and was a nod to John Lewis's March, which was a big influence on me. So I was lucky that Top Cow and Image Comics was able to wrap the 3 Kickstarter issues that I did and take the full trade to the direct market, which I think was a better move anyway. I mean, a book like that on a monthly schedule would probably die because, there's just not a lot of excitement around nonfiction comics. I mean, in a monthly capacity. So working for Top Cow and doing the Witchblade and Darkness Kickstarters, it's, giving people an opportunity to get a signature and getting something that they love and something they might have used to have and don't have anymore, offering that experience again and having it, signed by Mark Silvestri is a huge plus. And that's something you really can't get right now, especially during the pandemic with cons closed and comic book stores not able to take a full risk on what they normally would have really kind of paying attention to what they know can sell versus what they can have sit on the shelves for a long time. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I can't wait to talk about how much of a pain it is to do a Kickstarter, because that's a part of this equation. So yeah.
Jimmy, are you trying to point to something that is hidden?
No, Amanda was saying, Amanda had to run out. She's saying goodbye to me.
I thought you were like indicating a book behind you that none of us.
No, I didn't want to ignore her. You know, it's just.
Bye, Amanda.
She just ran out.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think let's absolutely move into what's tough about this, because it is a lot of work to do a Kickstarter. So, Henry, we can just keep on with you since you are already excited to talk about the hard stuff. What was the most difficult? What is something that you really have struggled with when running?
I mean, I'm lucky where I've had 3 successful Kickstarters, and I was able to learn from each one. Offering things that could fit in an envelope is one of the biggest pieces of advice I can tell everyone. I wanted to do shirts, I wanted to do hats and cool memorabilia that spoke to the Latinx audience, but packaging gets expensive, the weight gets expensive. Also just I mean, aside from the 30-day grind, which is like a very cool call to action and something a little bit that you don't really have in direct market comics. It's like, hey, 5 months from now, I'm going to have a book on stands, instead of, hey, we need to do this in 30 days, and having 30 days straight of working, which is, I think a pretty mental grind for anybody, is one of the biggest things, I think. And also being your own promotional person, where you're like not wanting to cloud everyone's timeline with your project, but also at the same time it needs to be out there, finding that balance of not being annoying but also being good to you and your project. Being your own publisher, editor, it's you turn into a Swiss Army knife for 30 days. So and leading up to that, there's like, at least, I mean, for me, a month or two of preparation before I do hit that launch button.
Yeah, I have creators who have never run a campaign before often ask me, well, if most people run it for 30 days, shouldn't I run it for 60 days and I'll raise twice as much money? And I say, no, please do not do that. You will ruin your life.
Yeah.
Afua, what about you? What do you think was the most difficult?
One was making something incentivizing. Getting the script for the video right. I can't tell you how many times I recorded that thing over and over again, and then I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna say what I mean. I'm just gonna be honest and say, this is why I'm doing this. This is what you get out of it, and this is why if you get in on the ground floor here, you will get something that people who just buy it out of the store won't be able to, and why it's important to me. And in addition to that, the budget, trying to figure out what I need, and then calculating, and then trying to think of things that you're not going to think of, like packaging and paying folks and taxes, and then making sure that you have enough cushion for the things that you don't anticipate. Just making a for-profit model instead of this is the bare minimum of what I need. That was something that was difficult for me to even wrap my head around, since I was just so used to okay, I can survive with this. It's I don't want to just survive with this. I want to thrive. And so giving myself a little wiggle room and saying okay, this is what I'm going to ask for that I think is achievable. And these are the things that I'm going to push to my audience and say, okay, well, if you help me get here, this will benefit you. I trying to figure out what they would want was I don't know. I hope you like this. Crossing all the fingers.
Right? You were right. They did like it. So you figured well.
Thank goodness.
Elsa, how about you? What was the toughest thing for you for running campaigns?
So first of all, I want to go back to what Afua just said, and the fact that as creators on Kickstarter, I think that the minds of the, you know, the state of mind and how Kickstarter is seen by people and by readers has changed. I think that making money, actual money and profit off of a Kickstarter was before maybe not seen super well by people. Like, why do you need more? I want to support you, but just to cover costs. Why? You know, and is that it has changed a lot. And nowadays, like Afua said, a lot of artists or just project creators include in their budget actual extra money to be able to live comfortably off their project. And I also think that it is maybe why more and more Kickstarter projects are fulfilled in time. Because when you start a campaign and then halfway through it, you're like, I need to do to take a side project to pay my rent. And so the Kickstarter project end up being, you know, put to the side. So anyway, I'm being sidetracked here, but I think it's important that to account for, you need to have enough money to live on and not just cover costs.
I think that's a crucial sidetrack, because I think that part of why the perception is shifting is because people are saying it, because people are saying out loud that artists need money too.
We are entitled and have a right to not just live with the bare minimum, you know.
Yeah. Right.
So back to your question about the difficulties, I actually enjoy the whole 30-day grind and the having to figure out your budget. I kind of have an accountant mind a little bit. So that's kind of what everyone else is like being put off by. I like. Yes, I don't mind, you know, having to like figure out the campaign and then shooting the video. I kind of love that. And to like, it's both of us, my partner and I do Kickstarter together, and that's a huge difference. If you can find someone to do this by your side, it's more support and it's just great. But the difficulties, like very practical difficulties I had for my two campaigns, was how to properly synthesize your project. Because as a backer, I really don't like long campaigns, like you have to scroll and scroll and scroll. I just lose interest halfway through it. So I always try myself as a project creator to keep the campaign as short as possible. And that is hard because you also want to, you know, give enough incentive to the backers to actually back the thing. So it's the actually writing and the copy of the campaign is, I think, really, really hard. And if you nail that, half the job is done. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's excellent. I do always advise people to include a TLDR at the top for all of us whose brains have been too addled by the internet to read more than a few sentences at a time. If people land on your campaign and are only willing to give you 10 seconds, you want them to understand at least what is this about entirely before they flitter off somewhere else. So I think that's a really good point. Jimmy, what do you got? What's the toughest?
Well, you know, and also just on that, I mean, we're in a visual medium, so you know, that first image is do or die. You know, the first thing they see when they get on a page. I'm like that with a movie. If I see a trailer, I'm like, this is not killing me. I probably won't go see it. So, you know, it's great to have a ton of art after, but I think the first image is so important. But you know, because when I started it, the problems I had were because I didn't have a lot of people I could ask about this stuff. So I had, like, you know, hundreds of packages. So initially postage was a big thing for me, because I was learning that, well, New Zealand, and then I got, you know, Singapore, and then I had people that didn't get their packages in places. So I had to learn a lot about. I had to understand that a certain percentage of the packages will always be destroyed or get screwed up in delivery. So I overprinted for things. I learned 15 Kickstarters. I learned what kind of packing materials to buy, and I share that with everybody. Everyone had asked me, I said, look, just order these, order a lot of them. And I learned to buy in bulk. I've learned to not use my living room as my Kickstarter place. because the other person living in the house doesn't exactly enjoy that, and although the cats do love it. But you know, so I learned that over the years, it's a lot of work. And then when people come to me and say, you know, hey, I want to do a Kickstarter, they have this thing in their mind. They're looking at the amount and they're just saying, well, look, I can make that. I can, you know. And I said, okay, but remember, it's not only you know, packing and shipping and working with printers, but it's interaction with the people supporting you, and if they have questions, answering them right away and all that kind of stuff. So in the beginning, it was a lot more of a massive thing to do, you know. And as I've gone, I've gotten actually help. My friend Patrick works with me, and we have a great time packing the stuff up. And I will say, and you guys know this, that if you do one or two or more over time, you start to see the same names and the people backing you. And then they come to cons and they say, hey, I backed your Kickstarter. And there's a face to the name, which makes you even more like, oh my, this person is great. I got to make sure when I pack their package, I throw something extra in there, you know. And so I learned, so the tough spot in the beginning was just fulfillment. And, but the wonderful thing about that is getting to know the audience one-on-one, and so all the tough stuff eventually, it's still always there, because if you know, Elsa, you know that if you have your second one, you had to ship so much more than your first one, you know, and you it's work, but it's stuff we believe in and we're willing to do that work. There's nothing greater than to be able to create and then to fulfill and get your work to people. So it's sort of like giving birth, I hear. It's like the minute, you know, it's horrible while it's happening, maybe, but like years later, you don't think about it. I can't say. I don't know.
The kidney stone.
I don't know.
It could be a kidney stone for men if we had to.
Yeah, kidney stone. That's right. I've had those, so I can tell you, it hurts when it's happening, but when it's gone, it's like I don't even think about it anymore. So.
Oh, these are fascinating metaphors. You guys are really killing it.
Yeah, I'll get yelled at that last one for sure.
No,
Bring it on, internet.
Radical transparency. I think it's because, you know, I mean, of course, like if you don't think it through, if you don't like understand what you're getting into, that's how creators can get into trouble, and it can go really badly. Elsa, actually, did your campaign go like wildly more than you expected, to the point that it changed how you had to fulfill?
Not to the point that it changed fulfillment, but fulfillment took us like four times longer than we had anticipated. But we had planned for a big success, just like you need also to plan for like, oh my God, this is not going well, what do we do? So it's not that we were expecting like a huge success, but you need to plan for it, just in case it happens and you don't find yourself like, how do I ship everything? Do I need to work with maybe like a fulfillment company now? No, you have to plan for the best and for the worst. That's really crucial when you're putting together a campaign.
Yeah, no, that's perfect advice. That is, you know, creators can really get themselves into trouble.
Oh, and also I have a piece of advice that I tried to like apply to myself to my second campaign, and then I didn't, so I really need to pay attention to that. It's like, think of then what's the word when you reach your goal, like stretch goal ahead, because maybe your campaign is going to go off like really quickly, really fast, and you need to have those stretch goals ready. And I didn't. And like it was sort of last minute panic. Oh my God, what do we do? So you need to plan those ahead, even if you are not sure that you will get funded at all. Just plan for stretch goals.
And I will add to that, if you're going to do stretch goals and you have digital books as part of your campaign, it's not about, you have to make sure everyone gets the stretch goals. So it can't just be a physical print and then the digital people. So I personally always try to make the stretch goals either more content in the book or a digital stretch goal so everybody can get it. But a lot of people, sometimes they forget that some people just got the digital and they're offering a print, and I'm like, okay, so what do I get? You know, it's just a little note there.
I had more digital reward, or you know, backers that just wanted the PDF or the digital file than I have ever last year. So yeah, that's definitely a good piece of advice.
I love this. I love this crosstalk. This is, you hardly need me.
Oh, we need you.
No, we need you.
Oh, thank you. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about how running these campaigns impacts your artistic process, whether it's before, during, or after, or in thinking about what you'll do with a campaign, whether that affects your daily, your work or your practice, things like that. Elsa, I'll start with you.
Okay, so for me, the impact was more on a career level, because I think the equivalent of having a Kickstarter audience, and that's even more true after your first campaign, when you had your second or third or fourth campaign, is that you have an audience, like people actually willing to hear you out, but often asking for more from you. So I think it's the pitching equivalent to being in the room. You have an audience and people willing to like suspend disbelief for a few minutes and read your campaign and be like, I think I could be interested, and they give you enough time to explain what you are presenting to them. So, and that what that does is that it allows you to do more, different projects, stuff that are maybe less commercial, less obvious, a little more bold, because you have that pull, may not be the right word, but of the audience is ready to hear you out. And that makes a huge difference, because the pitching process is halfway done.
Cool. Henry, what about you?
Did you ask me?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. No, I'm sorry. Let's see. For me, the process, I'm really good at keeping those two things separately, because it is a part of my day job. I'm able to kind of separate these apples and oranges, but also I think it helps me realize that there is, because Kickstarter to me is my personal network. A lot of the people that support me are people I know, that I've known from all walks of life, even before I started making comics. So I can actually see who's getting this, versus when my graphic novel is out at bookstores or libraries, I have no idea who's getting it now. And I think the Kickstarter, and I always print the names in the single issues and make sure that that they get to see themselves in the book, because if it weren't for them, this wouldn't be possible. So there's a little bit of added pressure to make sure I'm doing something good. I think that's what I get out of the creative process, and how I kickstart the book, because I know exactly who's getting it, because I copy and paste their name into stamps.com.
Afua, how about you?
For me, I feel like there's a really dramatic difference in my layout process, because now I no longer have to explain to an editor what my blobs and thumbnails are. I know what I'm doing. I'm writing and illustrating this book and making music for it. So the only people who I have to communicate with is myself and my collaborators. I have to make sure that whatever I'm making is clear to them. But for me, I'm like, okay, I can create a shorthand and just plow right through the creation process, instead of the back and forth that sometimes happens when someone doesn't quite understand what the vision is, and they think, well, I don't think that that's a good idea. And this book in particular is so personal, because it's, in a way, it's autobiographical. It's about me as a little girl and some of the nightmares that I used to have. And one in particular about my great grandfather, who passed away when I was 1. And, but also my grandmother and grandfather and their life in Alabama during the 40s and 50s. And when I tried to explain this project to a couple of other publishers, they liked the idea, but they didn't want me to include anything really about me personally. And I was like, oh, well, it's kind of important to the okay. Well, I'm just going to keep this over here. Thank you. So it's definitely changed my process. I don't know if I'm going to miss the editorial process at all. Not to say that I can't be critiqued. Sometimes I just can't see something and someone will have a vision and I'm like, okay, you know what? I think you're right about that. But in this particular instance, I have something in mind that I want to make. And now there's, I only have me to blame if it's terrible.
And you only have yourself to thank when it's fabulous.
This is true. This is true. I have way too much Virgo in my chart. I'm incredibly hard on myself. Everything is not good enough.
Jimmy, how about you? How does this affect your artistic process?
It opens it up actually, because I've been working so many years for everybody else, and I like to say I've made a lot of people very rich except for myself. Amanda and I always look back, we talk and we go, God, I'm like, boy, people are like, hey, look, that movie made 200 million. And we look at each other and goes, how much did we make? And they said, this t-shirt. So doing a lot of that over the years, and again, I've been doing the Kickstarters now since 2012. And I've only been doing one here and one there. And we just had that moment. Amanda and I had that moment that, like, we keep giving everything away. Like I can't tell you how many, even Marvel Knights, it's great to see Black Panther movie. It's great to see Punisher TV series and Daredevil series based on the books we did. And it's great to see Harley Quinn have movies and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, if we only gotten like one thank you in one of the films of all this stuff I've done, and I've done a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's been adapted that I've worked on, and we looked at each other and said, "Yeah, I'm done with this. I'm done with working for people telling us how to write and telling Amanda how to draw, and telling people, oh, you really shouldn't put that in the book." And I'm just like, wait, we've done 100 issues of this. We kind of know, that kind of stuff gets to you after a while. And, with the Kickstarter, again, like you said, if we make a mistake, it's on us. And if it sucks, it's on us. And if it's great, then we can say how brilliant we are. But I mean, it's on us, and it's not a group, it's not a committee, book, and it's not, and what we're doing is personal, like everybody here. It's personal to us. It's something we see that maybe other people don't see the way we want them to see it, and this gives us the opportunity to create something that is the way we see it. And again, it's either succeeds or fail on its own, but it's true to who we are. And I think that comes through with the Kickstarters, and it's also why I back so many Kickstarters, because I see it in their campaign, the love they have for the thing they're doing. And that's a lot more encouraging than the 17 more Batman books and the 45 other X-Men books. And it's like, after a while, there is no voice. It's a corporate voice, and I'm kind of tired of the corporate voice. So Kickstarter is perfect to spread our wings, and that's what we're doing. So.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and I'm excited about making artwork again. Like, I don't feel like I'm like, I gotta get this done. And it's still work.
Right, you have to get the right cape, or it's the wrong glove you put on. It's like can you go back because the glove isn't the right glove in that panel? You're like, what?
Man, I can't tell you how many times it's been like, here is a panel that is less than an inch wide. This is the wrong desk. This is the wrong presidential desk. And I was like, you can't even see.
Or the word balloon that covers the head is my favorite.
Oh, no.
You rendered for like an hour, and you're like, and the word balloon's like this, sits there, and all you see is a mouth.
Right, you've done all this detail, and it's like, oh, well, thanks. I started lettering my thumbnails. I'm like, never again. Never will I. Never ever.
Yeah. So creatively, it's we it's great to have the corporate job so we can really appreciate how great this is. If that makes any sense. It's like
yeah.
When I was a kid, my parents would get us out of Brooklyn, and bring us to this camp. And we thought it was the greatest thing in the world. And years later, I went back and the place was a dump. Like it was just the worst looking place. But as a kid, it was like, that's all I knew. And that was the greatest thing. Well, you know, so the charm's off the big companies for me. So I kind of see what,
yeah, it's just a dump.
between Kickstarter and the new publishers, you know, doing creator owned, like obviously Image Comics is not new, but there are more and more publishers being created. Like to offer creators the chance to, like you said, Afua, do what we want. There is less and less need for artists and writers to actually go to DC or Marvel. I mean, if you're not a fan and are actually, you know, I've always dreamt of drawing this or that character, I don't see that you really need to go there now.
I agree.
And a lot of us are leaving.
It kind of feels like what YouTube did for music. I came from the music industry first, and a lot of what I saw was recording artists who competed with existing recording artists, like the new ones. So say there was a big icon and they were a singer. I don't want to give any names because, you know, they're still out there. If somebody came in and they played a bunch of instruments and they wrote their own stuff and they really competed with who they already had existing, they would sign the artist and intentionally shelf them. They would torpedo their career to make sure they didn't compete with their investment. And so now without that kind of gatekeeping, YouTube goes directly to the audience, just the way Kickstarter does for comics. You don't have to sell your idea to anyone except the audience. And they're the ones who take the risk, but it's a lot smaller a risk. And so I can understand a Marvel and DC saying like, okay, well, this is safe. This is a character that we've had for many, many years. We're going to bank on this and we're going to stay around this. And that's fine. They can do that. But as independent creators, we have an opportunity to say the stories and tell the stories that don't get told, but people still want to hear. And this gives us the resources to be able to compete.
Yep, and Elsa knows this. Comics aren't just superheroes.
Yeah.
You know, and
right?
You know, any one visit to a European comic shop and you'll understand that in a second. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and there's a vast, you know, there's actually a lot of young creators who have zero interest in drawing superheroes just because they grew up on either European comics or manga, and they don't really want or actually maybe need to go to mainstream comics. So it's great that Kickstarter and other creative avenues have offered you know, new avenues for creators to express themselves and to choose.
Yeah, it's like
this may not be for you, but if it is, you can actually make a living off of Kickstarter.
Right.
I think Kickstarter also offers it continues the tradition of fans having an unbelievable amount of access to the people that make these comics. Like you can never meet Robert De Niro and buy his movie directly from him. You know, like there's just there is always, like, you know, I went from knowing Jimmy at San Diego Comic-Con to buying his comics and knowing, you know, just being and knowing in a personal way. And that I think Kickstarter continues that since we don't have cons. And it's you know, like you said, it's exciting time, and hopefully people are able to step up and do the stories they want to tell.
That may be why Kickstarter right now is so like huge, and especially in the comic book industries. Like you said, Henry, readers have, you know, they're used to being connected to creators. There's like a really personal relationship that gets established, and that works super well with the creator, the Kickstarter model.
You all did a really magical thing. My next question was going to be, how do you see Kickstarter impacting the broader comics industry? Already answered that.
I also think it's going to be eventually we're going to see Marvel and DC figuring out, like, doing their own Kickstarter. I know, like, people talk to me, they're like, they see the numbers sometimes, and, you know, there's a couple of campaigns that go through the roof, you know, and for for reasons we can read into when we look at the campaign. And then there's campaigns that go through the roof just because the content is so great, you know. There's two different kinds. So I always say it's only a matter of time before they start looking at it, because that's what corporations do. They look at how other people are making money and figure out, like, okay, how can we make money off this? They got to be careful though.
And Kickstarter is a corporation too. I mean, we think we also got to recognize that. And why don't you want to sell to 900,000 comic book readers like that? Right. I think that is just a huge, I mean, how many comic book readers are, you know, that's just a, I mean, and compared to the direct market, I think it'd be stupid for a company not to take advantage of that.
Yeah, didn't Boom just launch a Kickstarter with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, and then there are Power Rangers and
and it also kind of puts an ease on a smaller company that says like, okay, well, people really want this. We can invest in this, and they do want this. So their risk would be in investing up front instead of like producing a whole book and it tanks.
Yeah, I look at it as they're checking out that Kickstarter, and that means they're on Kickstarter. So they might find my book, you know, and they might say, hey, what else is on this? I never did this before. So I'm, you know, so I try to find the positives instead of yelling at the negatives. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah, it's easy to find a lot of fault in these large companies, but I tell you, I could not do what they do. And there's plenty of things that they create that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
It would be interesting actually to have some numbers to figure out whether those huge campaigns, like from bigger publishers, steal backers or not. That would be interesting to find out. I don't think they do. Divert backers' money to their big campaign instead of that money going to smaller campaigns. I don't know if that's the case at all. I don't think so, but that would be interesting to like crunch numbers and if that's possible at all.
I actually do have some information about that.
Oh.
It is sort of...
Yeah, we know somebody.
Marvelously, the opposite is actually true. A project like Berserker and these huge blockbusters, what they do is they bring a tremendous number of first-time backers to the site. Like Jimmy, you're not wrong.
Like Jimmy said, that's great.
It definitely indicates that the publishers and the folks that work at the big companies themselves are trolling Kickstarter. But so are new people who have never, like, we do have analytics about this, who have never been on the site before. And then we can trace that the percentages of those first-time backers who come for Berserker and stay for smaller projects and for, this.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, we've
I personally, I was running my campaign during the Boom Studios campaign, and I didn't see like my backers like dropping or not at all. So I figured it would be more good than bad.
Oh, for sure.
That's wow. I had so many more questions that I wanted to ask all of you, but we're pretty much done. So I think what I'd like to do to finish is have you each say, where are you on the internet, where folks can find you if they want to follow what you're doing and, find out more of your brilliance for themselves. Who did I never start with? I think Jimmy, you were never first, right?
Sure. They can find me. I'm on Twitter under my name, J Palmiati, and I'm on Instagram. I am not on Facebook. So if you see somebody that says my name on Facebook, that's not me.
Because you love yourself.
That's right. And I just don't trust Facebook. So also I have a website called PaperFilms.com, which features the work of Amanda and I, and people can come visit, and we have a mailer you can join when you go on, so we can fill up your mailbox every couple of weeks with what we're doing lately.
Awesome. Elsa.
I am on Twitter, on Instagram fairly irregularly. I'm not big on social media, but I'm on Twitter under my name.
Henry.
You can find me under Jimmy's bed, haunting his house.
Very true. He's right there. He's right on screen right now.
I'm Henry Barajas. You can find me on Twitter at Henry Barajas. Helm Greycastle, which was successfully kickstarted, is getting published to Image Comics and Top Cow Productions, and it'll be available the end of April at your local comic shop. Make sure you ask them to get it for me because I want to have what Jimmy has. And also follow Top Cow Productions. Yeah, I want that beach.
You want this?
Yeah, Top Cow Productions. We got another Kickstarter coming up, and we just finished Witchblade Volume 2, fulfilling Darkness right now. That's what I'm going to do after this. So, yeah, thanks Kickstarter for paying my bills.
Heck yeah. And Afua.
You can visit my website, afuarichardson.com. That's AFUA Richardson. No fancy consonants hanging out in there. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, I'm Dr. Fu, DOCTAFOO. And I'm also on Twitter under my name, Afua Richardson.
Heck yeah. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Oriana, ORIANA, BKLYN, Brooklyn. And my DMs are open if you are working on a campaign and you want to talk to me about it. I'd love to see if I could help set you up for success. So thank you all so much. This was really delightful. And congratulations on all of your successes. I can't wait to work with you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.